Yoki is the strongest demon in the Demon Kingdom, destined to slay the hero party and ensure the Demon King's victory. But there's just one problem: he has a crush on one of the hero party members. The hero party has finally arrived outside the demon castle, and they have completed all the side quests, so they are certain that they are strong enough to win. However, upon entering the castle, they run into a low-level demon general, Yoki, and he absolutely mops the floor with them. No matter how many overpowered moves they use, Yoki is able to outdo them, eventually rendering all of the heroes unconscious, but instead of finishing them off, he starts healing their wounds since he wouldn't want them dying because of him. But that's when he notices that the support mage of the hero party is actually pretty cute. He spends a solid 10 minutes just staring at her, but then his subordinates come out and they think it's kind of weird that he has just been standing over the unconscious girl for a while. They ask him if he's going to finish off the heroes so they can get on with their day, but Yuki says he doesn't want to kill anyone. Instead, he tells his subordinates to drop the heroes off at a nearby village before they wake up, so they all start dragging the bodies away, and Yoki is disappointed that he missed his chance to shoot his shot. 1 month later, Yoki is giving a report to the Demon Lord, and apparently, the heroes have tried to break in 13 more times in the past month, and every single time, Yoki knocks them out and drops them off at a safe location. The Demon Lord praises him for dealing with he intruders so easily, but he asks why Yoki doesn't kill them. Yoki makes up an excuse and says the heroes are so weak that he doesn't think it's worth killing them, but in reality, he just didn't like killing people. The Demon Lord tells him that if he doesn't want to kill them, he will have to ask his subordinates to do it instead, but Yoki knows damn well that his subordinates wouldn't stand a chance of beating those heroes, and even if they did, he wouldn't want to let that cute girl die, so he tells the Demon Lord he will take care of the heroes personally next time. The Demon Lord is pleased to hear him say that, so he dismisses Yoki, but as he is walking back to his room, he starts wondering what he should do. If he tries to spare the heroes next time, it will cause a lot of trouble, but if he lets them fight the other demons, the castle would be annihilated. Those heroes may look weak compared to him, but that's just because Yoki is unbelievably overpowered, so if they ever managed to get past him, they would definitely defeat the Demon Lord no problem. He wouldn't particularly care if the Demon Lord was defeated, but he doesn't want the priestess to get hurt, so he comes up with a plan. The next time the heroes try to invade the demon castle, Yoki once again completely dominates them, but this time, instead of knocking all of them out, he lets them get back to their feet and offers them a choice. He says that by now, it should be clear to them that they stand no chance of getting past him, but he is willing to make an exception today. He says he will allow them to pass, but only on the condition that they leave the priestess here with him. Yuga immediately refuses since he would never leave a comrade behind, but the mage comes up to him and says he should probably take the deal since this might be their only chance to defeat the Demon Lord. Besides, Yoki has had tons of opportunities to kill them over the last month, yet every time, he just drops them off safe and sound, so Cecilia will probably be fine. Still, Yuga doesn't think it's right to leave his comrade in the hands of the enemy, but Cecilia tells him to go ahead without her because she will be fine on her own. Since Cecilia is insisting, the others all agree to Yoki's deal and move ahead, leaving Cecilia and Yoki alone in the room. Now that the others are gone, Cecilia faces Yoki and asks him what he plans to do to her, but to her utter shock, he says he fell in love with her at first sight and asks her to be his girlfriend. Of all the things Cecilia thought would happen, she didn't expect to receive a confession from a demon general, and she doesn't know how she's supposed to react to that, so she just politely turns him down. Yoki is heartbroken and curls up into a ball on the floor to await death because nothing matters to him anymore. Cecilia feels kind of bad, so she asks Yoki if he's alright, but then she realizes that this might all be a trick to get her to lower her guard, so she raises her scepter and points it at Yoki, but surprisingly, he doesn't react at all and just sits there. She asks him why he's not fighting back, so Yoki responds and tells her there's no point. The only thing that mattered to him was confessing his feelings to her, and since she rejected him, he is ready to die knowing he tried his best. Cecilia still thinks he's trying to trick her, but Yoki tells her he really is tired of living like this. As a demon general, he is forced to guard this room constantly, and the only time he's allowed to go outside is to attack human villages, and he doesn't want to do that sort of thing. He may be a demon now, but that's just because he was reincarnated into this world, so inside, he is still a human at heart. If that's the case, then Cecilia asks why he chooses to serve the Demon Lord, because she's sure that with his power he could take him out if he wanted to. Yoki says he considered it, but then he realized that if he killed the Demon Lord, then he would automatically become the new Demon Lord, and that would be much worse for him. So he chose to just live his life as a low-level guard to avoid as much damage as possible. His life was all around gloomy and unbearable, but that all changed when he saw Cecilia's face. He may have only known her for a month, and yes, most of that time was spent with him knocking her out, but that was the best month of his entire life as a demon. So now that it's over, he doesn't care what happens anymore. Cecilia tells him to stop talking like that, because if he is truly human on the inside, as he says, then it's not too late for him to live a fulfilling life. A few days later, after the hero party successfully defeated the demon lord, they return to the capital where the king thanks them for their valiant efforts. He declares that the next 3 days shall be dedicated to celebrating the achievements of the hero party, but at the same time, outside the city, Yoki has just arrived and is preparing to start his life as a human. Cecilia gave him directions on how to get here, so now all he needs to do is blend in as a human and he will be able to spend time with her. But first, he needs to get rid of his horn, and it's definitely going to hurt. While the parade for the heroes is going on, Yoki makes his way into the Adventurers Guild and asks to register. The guy at the counter is annoyed by Yoki, but not because he doesn't like him. It's because he's lazy and wanted to get through the day without having it do any work. Since Yoki wants to register, he pulls out a registration form and hands it to him to be filled out. After Yoki fills out the form, Clayman processes it and creates a guild card for him. He explains that Yoki will have to start at F rank, but he can work his way up to S by completing quests and raising his reputation. Once Yoki confirms that he understands the rules, Clayman is about to hand over his guild card. But before he does, he tells Yoki that reissuing these cards is a massive pain in the butt, so he had better not lose it. Specifically, within the next 3 days, because Clayman is the only one on shift until the Hero Festival ends, and he doesn't want to have to deal with all the administrative hassle. Yoki promises to be careful, so he takes his card and heads out to complete a few missions, and by the end of the day, he has earned quite a bit of money. He hasn't met Cecilia yet, but his plan is to work as an adventurer for a while and become successful enough to be worthy of Cecilia, and after doing all that, when he confesses to her again, she's bound to accept his love. Over the next few days, Yoki routinely shows up at the guild to take on as many quests as he can, and he is already starting to draw a bit of attention because people are surprised by how fast he has been ranking up. Today, he is taking out another 5 quests, so he walks right up to Clayman's desk and asks him to process these for him, but Clay is pissed because he doesn't understand why Yoki keeps bringing so much work to him when there's another receptionist right over there. Yoki tells Clay he has simply grown fond of him, especially since he's surprisingly fast at processing all the quest forms he brings. But speaking of which, Clay is starting to wonder who Yoki really is, because there's no way an ordinary newbie would be able to raise their rank from F to D in a single week. Yoki is a little worried since he didn't realize working so hard might get him in trouble, but Clay has no intention of investigating him. It would be too much work, and it's not like ranking up quickly is a crime, so there's no reason for Yoki to get in trouble over it. Yoki is relieved to hear that, but before Clay could finish processing the quests, Cecilia walks up and asks Yoki to cancel his quests for the day. He's excited to see her again, but she looks like she has something serious to discuss, so she asks Yoki to come to her house so the two of them can talk. Yoki immediately agrees, and once they finally arrive, Cecilia takes him inside and prepares a cup of tea for him. She apologizes for not being able to meet him sooner, but Yoki says she doesn't need to apologize because he didn't make much of an effort to meet her either. Speaking of which, he asks her how she knew he would be at the guild today. So she explains that pretty much everyone has been talking about him recently. It's almost unheard of for a newbie to rise through the ranks as fast as he has, so it's natural that people would start talking about it. And when Cecilia heard the rumors, she knew it had to be Yoki, which brings her to the topic she wanted to discuss with him. She tells Yoki she would like him to quit being an adventurer, and he is shocked to hear this since it makes no sense, but he's sure there must be a reason, so he asks Cecilia to explain why. Cecilia tells him that the demon lord may have been defeated, but it's not like all the threats in the world are gone, and she is worried that the different nations which have been working together will start fighting to assert superiority over one another. There are already signs of this since countless nations have tried sending their princesses to the hero to establish a political marriage so they can use him as a pawn when the time for war comes. All the nations are busy looking for strong allies to use, and considering how well Yoki has been doing at the guild, it would only be a matter of time before the nations notice and try to recruit him for war. Either that, or they would label him as an enemy, and his new life as a human would be ruined. That's why Cecilia wants him to stop being an adventurer, and Yoki understands why she would be worried, but he's got bills to pay, and adventuring is the only way he can make any money. Cecilia understands that, which is why she says she is willing to hire him personally. However, she doesn't have enough money to pay someone as strong as Yoki what he's worth, so to make up the difference, She offers to do anything he wants because she can't risk letting the nation use him as a pawn in war. Yoki tells her to stop bowing because there's nothing any nation could possibly do to convince him to join a war, especially not an engagement. After all, the only person he is willing to marry is Cecilia. Cecilia is relieved to hear that Yoki isn't going to be swayed, and if he is so certain that he won't fall for any trick, then she tells him he is free to continue adventuring if he wants, though he should still try to keep a low profile. Just then, there's a knock at the door, and it turns out to be Cecilia's mother, and she's here because she's interested in meeting the friend that her daughter brought home. She asks Yoki if Cecilia has told him about her love life yet, and as soon as she mentions it, Cecilia becomes embarrassed, but her mother keeps going anyway. Cecilia has gotten a lot of proposals recently, all of which she turned down, so her mother asks Yoki if he would like to marry Cecilia. Yoki definitely wants to marry Cecilia, but he says he can't do it right now because he doesn't think he is good enough yet, so once he has gotten a stable life, he will confess to her again and she can decide whether she wants to marry him or not. Cecilia's mother likes Yoki's answer, because if he had said yes, she still wouldn't have let him marry her, but his response showed maturity, so she tells him he is welcome in this house anytime. A little while later, we see Yoki in the middle of one of his hero quests, and even though something like this would usually take a full week to complete, he is able to get it done in a single day. However, just as he is about to start heading home, he is suddenly attacked. 3 unknown assailants launch a coordinated attack against him, and Yoki tries to defend himself, but then he realizes that these people look really familiar. They are his subordinates from back when he worked at the demon castle, and he doesn't want to fight them, so he calls a timeout and reveals his true identity. They are all really happy to see that Yoki is still alive, but Duke is also pissed that Yoki practically ditched them back when the hero party attacked. Because he wasn't there to take care of them as usual, they ended up making it to the Demon Lord's throne room and defeating him. It's almost as if Yoki intentionally let the heroes go through without a fight, and on top of all that, he looks like a human now for some reason. Yoki tells them all to calm down because he has a very good reason for what he did, so the 3 wait to hear what he has to say because they know it must be important. But when Yoki tells the only reason he did all this is because he has a crush on the priestess of the hero party, they can't wrap their heads around it. Yoki tells them that from now on, he plans to live as a human, so they don't need to think of him as their captain anymore and are free to do whatever they want. However, they all tell him they don't want to. They much prefer hanging around Yoki, and besides, they really want to meet the woman who stole his heart. Yoki tells them there's no way that can happen because if someone spots them, then it would cause mass panic in the city. They all say that's not a problem since they can just hide their demon features the same way Yoki did, and since they are so insistent, he agrees to let them come, but he warns them that blending in with humans is going to be as easy as they think it is. Later that day, Yoki brings his subordinates to meet Cecilia after disguising themselves, but it was a lot more brutal than they expected, especially for Happiness, since Yoki had to pluck her feathers out one by one. They all sit down to have some tea together, and Cecilia says she's pleased to meet them, but even though she knows they are demons, they don't look like it at all. Duke explains that they all did their best to make themselves look as human as possible, and in his case, since he's a Dullahan, Yoki fused his head into his armor so it wouldn't roll off. Duke seems to be getting along really well with Cecilia, but it's making Yoki a little jealous since Duke never talks this much around him. But all of a sudden, now that he's in front of a cute girl, he's chatting away. Duke explains that he just didn't talk much back then because he used to hate Yoki's guts. Yoki had a reputation for being a total shut-in back at the demon castle, and even when his superior would yell at him to go outside and kill some humans like a respectable demon general, Yoki would just threaten to beat his ass until he eventually gave up and left him alone. However, Duke couldn't stand for such callous behavior from a demon general, so one day, he barged into Yoki's room to teach him a lesson. He had assumed that a shut-in loser would be easy to knock some sense into, but he assumed wrong, and Yoki proceeded to beat him up. After that, he became one of Yoki's subordinates, and while he held a grudge over the ass-whopping he received for a while, he eventually moved past it and accepted Yoki as his leader. He's sure it was the same for Happiness and Shake as well, but speaking of those two, he has no idea where they ran off to. It would be really bad if anyone other than Cecilia were to find out about their true identities, so they head inside to go look for them, and they just so happen to find Cecilia's mother in the garden with Shake sleeping on her lap. Aquaray notices them approaching and asks if they know who this boy is by any chance, so they explain to her that Sheik is one of Yoki's friends. Yoki apologizes for any trouble that Shake might have caused, but Aqua tells him there's no need to apologize because she loves spending time with kids. She found Sheik running around in the garden, so instead of worrying about insignificant details like how he got in here, She decided to join him, and the two played tag together until Sheik eventually tired himself out and fell asleep. Since Sheik is accounted for, Yoki asks Aqua if she happened to see a girl with Sheik earlier, and she confirms this, but she says the headmaid took her away a while ago, so she's probably inside right now. That sounds like trouble waiting to happen, so Yoki and the others rush inside to find her, but to their surprise, they see Happiness being trained on perfect maid etiquette. Once Sophia spots the group, she explains to them that she was just finishing up with training the new maid, but Cecilia informs her that Happiness isn't a maid, she's one of Yoki's friends. Sophia asks Happiness if this is true, and she confirms it, so Sophia apologizes for the mix-up and tells her she can leave if she wants. Yoki tells Happiness she should go change out of the maid outfit, but to his surprise, she says she doesn't want to. Being a maid is a lot more fun than she thought it would be, so she would like to start working here, and Sophia has no objections, so Happiness is now an official maid. By the end of the day, they all get ready to leave and wish Happiness good luck on her first day as a maid. But before Yoki could leave, Aqua pulls him aside and mentions that Cecilia hasn't had a chance to relax in weeks, so she plans to force her to take the day off, so if Yoki was going to ask her out on a date, that would be the best time. This is one of the best layups Yoki has ever received, and he's going to make sure it doesn't go to waste. Once it's time for the date, Cecilia arrives in her carriage, and Yoki is blown away by how nice she looks in her outfit. He says he's going to do everything within his power to make sure she enjoys her day off to the fullest, and she finds it funny that he's taking this so seriously, but she's looking forward to finding out what he has planned. As they walk through town, Cecilia notices that the local bakery has a new type of cake in stock, so she suggests that the two of them should stop by once they are done with their date. In the meantime, the two continue their walk through the city, and Yoki can hardly keep his eyes off Cecilia because she's way too cute, but so far, things have been going really well, and Cecilia really seems to be enjoying herself. They soon pass by an accessory store, and the two of them are about to head in together, but it just so happens that Yuga and Mikana from the hero party were passing by at the same time. As soon as Yuga recognizes her, he calls out to Cecilia, completely ignoring Yoki. He says it's a crazy coincidence that they all took days off on the same day, and since they are all here, he suggests that they should spend the rest of the day together. Cecilia tries to turn him down politely by explaining that she was already spending time with Yoki, and now that Yoki has been mentioned, Yuga feels like the two of them have met somewhere before. Yoki tells him it's probably just his mind playing tricks on him, and Yuga decides to just let it go for now. He then suggests that they should all head in together so no one is left out, and he barely gives Cecilia any time to object before leading her inside. Mikana is upset about this whole thing because the one day she managed to convince Yuga to go on a date with her, this happens. She can tell that Yoki was also on a date with Cecilia, so she wishes him good luck because if he manages to make Cecilia fall for him, then Yuga would have no choice but to focus on her instead. As Yoki heads inside, he meets back up with Cecilia, and since they are here, he offers to buy her a gift. Cecilia tells him he doesn't need to do that, but Yoki says this is his way of thanking her for all the help she has given him, so she eventually agrees. Yuga sees this, and it immediately makes him feel hella jealous, so he cuts in between the two of them and says he wants to pick out gifts for everyone, clearly trying to one-up Yoki. Yoki picks out a necklace that he thinks will look great on Cecilia, while Yuga just picks out the most expensive-looking pendant in the store because he didn't know what else to buy. He tries to get Cecilia to put it on, but in the process, he accidentally knocks off her disguise, and now that she is no longer wearing her hat and pair of glasses, everyone in the store instantly recognizes her and the other members of the hero party. They are all instantly swarmed by fans and chased down the street, causing Yoki to be separated from Cecilia, and while trying to find her, Yoki ends up running into the last member of the hero party, Sir Raven, while he is being swarmed by a group of girls, and he seems pretty uncomfortable. Yoki decides to help him out, so he distracts the crowd by pointing them in the direction of Yuga before grabbing Raven and running into an alley. Once they have lost the crowd, Yoki was expecting Raven to at least thank him, but he remains completely silent, so he assumes Raven just isn't the type to speak much. However, as he is leaving, he hears Raven ask him to wait, and he immediately understands why Raven doesn't speak much. It's because his voice sounds like that of a teenage girl. He usually avoids talking in front of crowds because he is worried that people will laugh, but Yoki doesn't intend to make fun of him for it. After all, everyone has things about themselves that they are insecure about. Raven is relieved to have met someone as understanding as Yoki, but just then, Yoki remembers that he's supposed to be looking for Cecilia, so he takes off running to meet back up with her. The rest of the day goes by without any further problems, but by the next morning, Yoki finds out that Cecilia has come down with a fever as a result of all the stress yesterday. She was already near her breaking point, but having to deal with all those fans at once sent her over the edge, and Yoki feels like this was his fault. Aqua tells Yoki that he doesn't need to feel guilty since Cecilia only has a mild cold, and she isn't mad at him because of the way things turned out. But she is mad at Yuga on the other hand, so they are going to have a long talk about boundaries next time she sees him. Even though he's the one who caused Cecilia's condition, the moment he heard about it, he tried coming over so he could take care of her. But the maids turned him away at the gate before he could cause any more damage. With that said, Aqua thinks it would be nice for Cecilia to see a friend while she's recovering, so she asks Yoki to pay her a visit. Sophia leads Yoki to Cecilia's room and knocks on the door to let her know that he's here. Cecilia begins panicking and asks Yoki to wait outside while she cleans up in here, but Sophia assures her that there's no need to worry because she already put away all of Cecilia's toys before Yoki arrived. But hearing her say it out loud is still just as embarrassing. Either way, it's fine for Yoki to enter now, so he walks in and takes a seat next to her bed. He apologizes for how things turned out and tells her he will make it up to her somehow, but Cecilia says she doesn't blame him for what happened. However, if he really feels guilty about it, then she tells him he can make it up to her by going out on another date with her once she has recovered. Yoki is stunned for a moment because Cecilia basically asked him out just now, and it's the best thing that has happened to him all day, so he tells her he will make sure their next date will be better than she could ever imagine. Unfortunately, he was a bit too enthusiastic with his declaration, and yelling around Cecilia might make her condition worse, so Sophia comes in and politely kicks him out. He is about to head home, but all of a sudden, he notices Raven nervously walking up to Cecilia's house, and he's curious about what he's doing here, so he goes over to say hi. Raven seems like he has a lot on his mind, so Yuki asks if there's something bothering him, and Raven admits that he's trying to build up the courage to confess to the girl he likes. Just like Yoki, she didn't laugh at his voice when she heard it, and ever since then, Raven has had a crush on her, but he's not sure if she likes him back. Yoki doesn't really understand what Raven is so worried about because he is tall, handsome, and famous. The only problem he has is his voice, and the girl he likes has already said she doesn't mind it, so he's got a pretty good chance of her accepting his feelings. Raven realizes that Yoki is right, so he decides to go through with his confession, and Yoki is proud of him. But then he realizes that Raven is walking right up to Cecilia's house, so he might have created more competition for himself. He tries to convince himself that Cecilia would never accept such a sudden confession from Raven, but then again, they were in the heroes' party together, so there's a chance that they might have had some romantic moments during their travels. He starts panicking again, but just then, he sees Raven walk back from the mansion completely shattered. He genuinely believed that the worst she could say was no, but he was wrong, and now he just wants to go home and think about his life in the shower. Seeing Raven so dejected gets Yoki curious, so he gets back up to the house and asks Sophia if she knows what happened to Raven when he came over to confess his feelings to Cecilia. She tells him that Raven did indeed come here, but from what she saw, he was here to talk to Happiness. And this information really catches Yoki off guard because he had no idea that Raven had a crush on her. He decides to go talk to Happiness, and when he finally finds her, he asks if she spoke to a red-haired guy a little while ago. Happiness confirms this, so Yoki tells her that Raven is actually one of his friends, and she looks surprised to hear that. Yoki then goes on to ask if it's true that Raven confessed his feelings to her, and if so, he would like to know what she said that made him so upset. Happiness pauses for a moment, but she eventually reveals that when Raven asked her out, she immediately told him it was absolutely impossible. Getting rejected like that would hurt anyone's feelings, so Yoki understands why Raven was so depressed afterwards. But if Happiness doesn't like him, then there's nothing to be done. However, she says she actually does like Raven, but before Yoki could ask her what she means by that, she runs off. Later that night, Yoki calls a meeting with the rest of his subordinates to discuss what's going on with Happiness and Raven's relationship. The other two have no idea who Raven is supposed to be, so Yoki clarifies that Raven is the swordsman from the hero party. But as soon as he says this, Duke flares up and demands to know why Yoki would set Happiness up with a human. Yoki explains that he wasn't the one who introduced them, and as a matter of fact, he has no idea how they met in the first place, but that's not the issue here. He tells everyone that Raven recently confessed to Happiness, and Duke assumes she must not have taken it well since most of the humans she had dealt with were either trying to capture her for her feathers or were furry lovers. Either way, it was pretty bad. That said, Sheik doesn't think Happiness hates all humans. After all, she willingly chose to work as a maid because she liked the people in the mansion, so she must have been able to tell that Raven is a good guy. The next day, Yoki heads into the guild as usual, but to his surprise, Kramen isn't here today. One of the other receptionists calls Yoki over since she recognizes him as the guy who's always talking to the vice guild master. Yoki has no idea what she's talking about at first, but she explains that despite how lazy Kramen seems, he really is the Vice Guild Master here. This is a shocking revelation, but right now, Yoki is more interested in finding out where Kramen went. It's kind of supposed to be a secret, but since Yoki is friends with Kramen, the receptionist informs him that he was hospitalized after a fight with his wife. Later that day, Yoki goes to the hospital to pay Kramen a visit, and he's surprised by how badly he was hurt. He asks what happened, so Kramen explains that yesterday was his anniversary, so he wanted to pick out a good present for his wife, but he got so locked in that the entire day went by with him staring at jewelry, and by the time he finally made it home, he had already missed dinner. So his wife thought he had forgotten about the anniversary, and they got into a huge fight afterwards. Yoki thinks Kramen's wife must be pretty strong if she was able to injure him like this, and he says this much is to be expected since she's a former A-rank adventurer. Yoki can't believe Kramen is married to someone who is A-rank level, but for the record, Kramen is also a former A-ranker. It's going to take a while for Kramen to heal from all those wounds naturally, so Yoki offers to use healing magic to help him, but Kramen immediately shuts the idea down. Being injured like this is the perfect excuse to get his wife to nurse him back to health. Just then, Kramen's wife walks in, and it turns out to be Sophia, which is a huge shock to Yoki. He never could have imagined that she would get married to someone like Kramen, but they seem happy together, aside from the occasional violent misunderstanding. A little while later, Yoki is getting ready to leave, so Sophia thanks him for keeping her husband company before she arrived. He says there's no need to thank him because it's normal to visit an injured friend, but speaking of friends, he asks Sophia if Cecilia is doing any better today. She tells him that Cecilia's fever is gone, so she is feeling a lot better now, but she is currently out running errands, so he won't be able to see her for a while. Yoki asks Sophia if she has any ideas for a good gift he could give her since he wants to do something nice for her, but she tells him that as long as it comes from the heart, Cecilia will be happy with anything he gets her. Yoki thanks her for the advice and leaves the hospital, but as he is walking down the street, he starts fantasizing about what it would be like if he and Cecilia ever got married. By the time he snaps out of it, he realizes that he's near the night dorm, so he decides to check in on Raven while he's here. He opens the door and finds Raven lying in bed, just as depressed as he was the day Happiness rejected him, and he feels bad for the guy, so he wants to help. He asks Raven if he can explain how he and Happiness first met, so Raven tells him it all started on one ordinary afternoon. Raven was busy with his daily patrol when he suddenly noticed a girl being harassed by a couple of drunk guys. He swiftly dealt with the first guy, and after the others realized who he was, they all ran away, so his job here was done. Since Happiness was safe now, he turned to walk away, but she suddenly grabbed his cape to thank him. Raven told her there's no need to thank him, since he's just doing his job, but then he realized that he had just revealed his voice to a stranger, and he started worrying that she might make fun of him for it. However, on the contrary, Happiness told him he had a nice voice. At first, he thought she might be joking, but Happiness was as serious as can be because she genuinely liked the way Raven's voice sounded. She then thanked him again for saving her and ran off to finish her shopping for the day, but she left a lasting impression on him. That's why he eventually worked up the courage to confess to her. But it didn't go as well as he thought it would. He thinks it was a mistake to confess so soon when they barely know each other because it probably made her uncomfortable. However, Yoki tells him he shouldn't give up so soon because he has a feeling that he might still have a chance with Happiness. But for now, he suggests that the two of them should go out for a while to cheer him up. Yoki ends up taking Raven to the jewelry store that he came to with Cecilia last time, because he never got to buy that necklace for her. And while they are there, Raven spots a beautiful pendant that would look great on Happiness. He isn't sure whether he should buy it or not, since Happiness might think it's weird to receive a gift from someone she barely knows, but Yoki assures him that she will appreciate the thought he put into it. And if nothing else, she's bound to like the design because it suits her really well. Raven eventually decides to buy the pendant, and since he doesn't want anyone to hear his voice, he communicates with the cashier through a pen and paper. However, as they are leaving the store, Yoki and Raven end up running into Mikana, and she's surprised to see the two of them in a jewelry store together. She asks what they are doing here, and Yoki immediately responds, saying they are here to buy gifts for the women they love. Mikana already knew that Yoki has a crush on Cecilia, so she isn't surprised by that, but she had no idea that Raven had a crush as well. She asks him to spill the beans, but Raven refuses to say a word around her, and it's entirely her fault because she once made fun of his voice, and ever since then, he has been too self-conscious to talk around her. Mikana feels bad about it, and she has already apologized, but she knows apologizing doesn't change what she did, so she doesn't want to force him. However, even if Raven doesn't want to speak to her, she still wants to hear all the details about his crush, so she invites him and Yoki to have lunch with her. However, just when she thinks they'll finally be willing to talk, Yoki and Raven start stuffing their faces with food so they don't have to say anything. It was a perfect plan, but as soon as Mikana mentions that she could tell Yoki some stories about Cecilia if he talks to her, he immediately gives up on the plan. Mikana asks him how far he has gone with Cecilia, and he tells her it's nothing special because they aren't dating yet, and she apparently got tons of marriage offers, including one from Yuga. Hearing this gets Mikana a little worked up because she doesn't understand why he won't pick up on her hints already. He has always been a bit of an airhead, so he would sometimes accidentally walk in on her and Cecilia changing or taking a bath. And he is so popular with the ladies that a huge crowd always formed no matter where they went. It was never really intentional on his part, but his carefree behavior did really annoy Cecilia, and she can be terrifying when she's mad. Mikana then asks Raven about his crush, but Yoki cuts her off because he doesn't want to let her mess with him. Mikana promises that she's not trying to make fun of him for his crush or anything, she just has a few relationship problems of her own that she wanted to talk about. The truth is, she has a feeling that Yuga hates her because of something she did. She tells Yoki that, although the kingdom's report says they claimed absolute victory over the demon lord, they were actually defeated multiple times, and it was by a random demon general no less. Each time they lost, they would end up in a nearby village with all their wounds healed for some reason, but no matter how many times they went back, that demon kept defeating them in the most humiliating ways. Yoki is starting to feel a little guilty since he dragged out their defeat a few times so he could spend more time looking at Cecilia, but in his defense, he wasn't trying to humiliate them. Anyway, after each defeat, the party was forced to lie to the people and hide the fact that they had been defeated in order to preserve their faith in the hero party. But supplies were running low, and if they didn't defeat that demon soon, the people would lose all trust in them. That's when, on one attempt, the demon in question made them an offer. It said it would allow them to go straight to the demon lord's throne room unchallenged, but only if they were willing to leave Cecilia behind, and Mikana was the one who convinced everyone to abandon her, so Yuga wouldn't be seen as a failure. Cecilia ended up surviving, but Mikana doesn't think Yuga has forgiven her for making such a cruel choice. He still acts friendly and cheerful around her, but she can tell that his opinion of her has changed. Cecilia must also think of her differently after what happened, so things have been kind of awkward between them. Yoki feels partly to blame for all this because it was his actions that caused the rift to form in their party, but there's not much he can do to fix it. He asks her if she has at least tried talking to Cecilia about this, but how exactly is she supposed to do that? She can't just come out and say she was willing to sacrifice Cecilia because she cared more about protecting Yuga's honor as a hero. Yoki knows it's a tough topic to talk about, but if nothing is done, then they will all continue being awkward around each other indefinitely, so he tells her to give it some thought. Mikana realizes that Yoki is right, so she decides to do her best to make amends after all. Raven also decides to try talking to Happiness again, so he and Yoki head back to Cecilia's house. He eventually finds Happiness and apologizes to her for confessing so suddenly last time. He then hands her the pendant he bought and asks if she would like to start out as friends, and Happiness seems to like that idea. This was the end of episode 3. Subscribe to not miss the next part.